So let's talk a little bit about what do you do after high school. So you finished high school, you finished publicly funded mandatory education. What do you do? And this is probably one of the questions I get asked the most often because a lot of my viewers are fairly young and they're coming up to this time in their life and they haven't really been prepared at all for it. And part of the difficulty with this, and there's this whole narrative, and I'm not going to get too political in this, but that a whole generation like millennials and Zoomers, they went to university, they shouldn't have gone to university, they took up huge student loans, and it's their fault. Now, I'm just going to say this up front, don't listen to any of the conventional wisdom. I'd say, and I'm not someone who really likes saying this, because I don't say this when it comes to like medicine, but take everything your guidance counselor or your career class or your parents or whoever tells you with a massive grain of salt. Because a lot of it is empty platitudes, a lot of it will screw you later on, and a lot of it comes from people who haven't had to deal with these conditions ever. And if they did, it was like 20, 30 years ago. So don't listen to any of these people. I'm not saying you have to listen to me, but just keep in mind the situation a lot of people are in is because they listen to these people. And it's not their fault or anything. I mean, when you're that age, you're like 15, 16, 17, you're supposed to be able to listen to people who are older than you. You're supposed to be able to like rely on their advice. That's what you're supposed to do. But in this case, a lot of the people give you really, really bad advice. So let's see. What are some of the most common pieces of bad advice you'll hear? Go to university just to go to university. If you have a university degree, you're set for life. Everybody goes to university. University is the new high school. All that matters is you go there and you get a degree in something. Maybe like 60 years ago, but nowadays the majority of the population, in particular, I've seen some studies that something like 90 to 100% of like Gen Z's parents want to send their kids to post-secondary education. So it's like, it's not something special like it might have been in the 1950s or 1960s or something. It's just kind of par for the course. Everybody has a university degree at this point in time. Not everybody should have one. Having higher education should improve your job prospects more than it does. But the truth of the matter is that's just kind of how the reality is, and there's not really much we can do about it. So the worst thing you can do is go to university because you don't know what else to do with your life. You aren't really sure of a career. You just figure you'll go to university. You'll figure it out later on what you want to do. You just get your degree in something. Don't do that. That's the worst thing you can do because you're just wasting time and money. That's not to say I'm like not a big advocate of education because I am, but you don't want to jump into something just for the sake of doing it. So that's number one. Number two, don't believe anyone who tells you to follow your dreams. Any of these empty platitudes, do what you want, the money will follow your dreams, you can be anything you want to be. This stuff is all nonsense. That's not to say like you have to pick the most boring, lame job possible. That's not to say you can't try to do something you like. But these things can take time. A lot of cases, if you want to be doing something that you're really passionate about, it might take putting in a whole bunch of time at a lower level, doing something more menial until you can kind of work your way up to the industry or the role that you really want to be working in. A lot of the time, your passion might not be something that's economically viable. Like, let's say music is your passion. And you're like, just follow your dreams, go to like, I don't know, Nashville or wherever people go to be musicians, and just go there until you make it, and just spend all the time doing that. Or go to university for music, etc. The actual job prospects are extremely poor in the field. You probably won't be making any money, but it's your dream. You have to go follow your dream. You want to be a history professor. You want to, I'm trying to think of, you want to be an international diplomat. Like, there's a lot of jobs that there aren't that many spaces for that require a lot of experience and additional education beyond just a 4-year university degree. And there's just kind of all these other factors involved in getting them that really isn't explained to you at the outset. Like, maybe you want to work in government. You aren't going to get into like a role where you can actually make a difference or you can actually impact public policy until you've done like your undergrad, you've done like 10 years maybe at a bottom low level of a ministry, work your way up, do your master's, maybe your doctorate. Like a lot of these things take time. Pursuing your passion can take a lot of time, and the road towards it is not always a clear one. That's not to say you can't follow your passion. Like I do this YouTube channel part-time. It's not my job. It's often what I'm more passionate about, I guess, than what I might be doing at my day job. But you have to balance your passion with reality. So maybe, yeah, you want to do music, but you obviously you can't support yourself doing that, so just do music as a hobby or do it as like a part-time thing. Maybe play a couple gigs, get going, maybe someday you'll be in a position to transfer to it. It's like people who just decide they want to go all in on a YouTube gaming channel or something like that when they don't have any viewers. It's probably not going to happen. If you want to start a YouTube gaming channel and work at it and build it up over time, that's good, but that's not going to pay your bills in the meantime. And people will say, oh, money doesn't make you happy. That's bullshit. I mean, money isn't everything, but it's pretty damn important. Like, even if we're not talking about luxury goods, being able to pay your rent, being able to buy food, being able to put away a little bit of money, knowing that if something happens to you, you aren't going to wind up on the street. These things are all pretty important to being happy. So the whole money doesn't matter thing is nonsense. Are people overly materialistic? Yes. Do people spend money on stuff they shouldn't? Yes. But generally speaking, making a decent paycheck will make you happier. If for no other reason, then you can afford to buy better quality food. You can afford to maybe take a couple vacations. You can save some money for your retirement. You don't have to struggle to make ends meet every month. I mean, money does make you happy. Now, there's a diminishing return. Like, I'd say $1 million, going from like $500 to $1 million is much less of a improvement than like $50,000 to $100,000. But generally, money does matter and it does make you happy. Another piece of nonsense is you should go to school immediately after high school and you shouldn't work. I think if you can, the ideal might be after high school, go work for a year or two. Go try out a couple different things. Try to figure out what you're really passionate about, what your field is, etc. And then maybe once you kind of have a better idea in mind of what will actually be required for jobs in the industry you want and what industry you want to go into, then you go to university. There's no reason you have to rush into it. You have the rest of your life. If you're going to make a big investment of 4 years and X number of thousands of dollars, you might as well try to take your time and make a good decision. So, let's see here. Okay, so we have all that stuff. So we're like, okay, so Arjun, should I just learn accounting or should I just learn to code? Or should I just pick whatever job has the highest income to effort ratio and go with that? And no, when I'm saying you shouldn't follow your dreams, I'm not saying you shouldn't do what you want to do. I'm saying you have to try when you're trying to pick a career, there's 3 things you should keep in mind: interest, ability, and feasibility. Firstly, interest. Is it something you're interested in? It doesn't have to be your life's sole passion. It doesn't have to be the thing you spend all your free time doing. But your career should be something you're at least interested in. Something that you enjoy to a certain extent. Like, once again, maybe music is your passion, but you're really good with your hands and you like tinkering with things. So you decide, oh, maybe I'm going to be a mechanic. Because I do enjoy it. I don't enjoy it as much as music, but I'd be fine working this every day. I mean, that's what you have to keep in mind. At the end of the day, it's if you can't be super happy at your job, you can at least be satisfied with your job and feel like it doesn't feel like it's sucking the life out of you. Maybe it's like you're still happy to reach quitting time and you're happy to go home and do something else. But if you're absolutely miserable every day, it doesn't really matter how much of a paycheck you're making. I mean, because these things are all in kind of moderation. Money does matter and money does make you happy, but to a certain extent, your job can only get so bad before that money stops mattering. So you want to find something that you're interested in. So what I'd recommend is maybe make a list of your interests and just go through them and try to match them up to jobs. Think, okay, what could I do with this? What could I do with that, etc. And I'd say maybe that's like number one that you want to do. Next is there's ability. People just have different natural abilities and different backgrounds. To a certain extent, like, I would never be good at coding. I could spend from now until my death day trying to learn coding, and I'd still suck at it, and I'd still be worse at it than some like grade schoolers who have a natural aptitude for it. Meanwhile, some people I know just can't write as good as I do it in the workplace, and they could spend any amount of time trying to do that, and they couldn't do as good a job as I could. People have different natural talents, people have different backgrounds. Because something sounds cool, or somebody tells you to do something, or there's a lot of money involved, doesn't mean that it's like a feasible thing for you to do. Like, and this is kind of my issue with all the go into STEM, you're just afraid of doing math. Not everybody is capable of really doing the kind of math. And even if they are capable of doing it, it's not an effective use of their time, their employer's time, and the education system's time. Most people have at least some natural talent in some area, and kind of what you have to do is try to figure out what that is, and then match it up with what you're interested in, and then matches up with what will be feasible as a career. Something you might want to look into is what fields are in demand and what fields there's projected to be demanded in the future. I know people talk a lot about logistics, truck drivers, some blue-collar stuff, although a lot of that is now getting filled out. In Canada, they just kind of imported a bunch of guest workers to deal with the shortages. But just take a look around. See, I don't know, like Google, like top jobs coming up, growth industries, jobs that can't be automated, that kind of thing. And just look through and maybe make a list of that. And then just go through the three lists you have, your interests, your natural talents, and what will be a job you can reasonably get. That you can reasonably get the education for, a job that you can get, and a job that can last you for the foreseeable future. And then narrow it down and start looking for university or college or apprenticeship or whatever. That's kind of how I'd recommend going about it. Because I don't want you to be miserable. I don't want you to like say, oh, I'm making money, but I hate my life. But at the same time, are you really going to be happy if you're like a professional NEET who's like e-bagging to try to make a failed music career go nowhere? No, I don't think you're going to be happy under those circumstances either. So I guess something else to try to keep in mind is what kind of income and working conditions and living conditions are you going to want? Because some people want a much more glamorous lifestyle. Some people are pretty happy with a very minimalist lifestyle. And that should all kind of come into consideration when you're trying to pick a career to go into. Because oftentimes careers that have higher incomes, that give you a higher standard of living in terms of material comforts, you have to work more hours at, or they take up more of your time, or you have less of the time to pursue your other hobbies. Whereas sometimes the opposite is often the case, where stuff that gives you time to do the other stuff doesn't pay as well. So it's kind of this type of life. Are you okay living a Spartan lifestyle if your job's relatively easy and you have a lot of time to pursue your reading or religious activities or political activities? Or are you willing to have less of that in favor of making more money? So these are all things I think you should keep in mind, and these are just kind of some of my general advice when you're trying to figure out what you're going to do after high school and what you're going to do for a career. As always, this is Arjun. God bless everybody.